Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves, and today I'm one third of what is a bit of a departure from our usual podcast. Remember folks, the Echo Chamber podcast is a free-flowing conversation that may occasionally touch on mature subjects. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Martin McMahon.
How you doing there?
How are you, Martin?
Not too bad, Tony.
More importantly, I'm delighted to say that we're joined in the Tortoise Shack at this stage, as it's becoming known, all the way from Donegal, folks, by a Twitter royalty, an aspiring Viking, the occasional satirist, and owner of probably the most acerbic no-comment on all of Twitter. Fintan O'Toolbox. Fintan, thanks for coming on.
Very nice to be here. I don't know if I'll be allowed back into Donegal now that I've been described as royalty. not big on monarchy up there.
Well, now hang on. That brings me on to something. You wrote a piece on Donegal Dollop, I think it was in January, about the Goatstone Shave.
Goatstone Shave, yes.
Yeah, saying that they were going to organise building a wall around Donegal.
Yeah, they're going to implement their original plan from the early 90s to wall off Donegal.
Yeah. And you're going to have Derry pay for it.
Yes.
And what did you make then of this week on Twitter, where I saw the Lord Kilcooley saying that Donegal was actually in fact going the opposite way now and going to rejoin?
I was tagged in on the periphery of that. I can't remember who it was who tagged me in. He wants to. He couldn't spell Ireland. First of all, was a weird thing. I wasn't sure what country he was referring to at first, but I think he wants Donegal back, and he. His argument, I think, was that it's left behind by the Republic, which is kind of true, I suppose. But he was making a financial argument and saying that the people of Donegal would like to maybe go across to Britain. So I was saying we could maybe give him Dunfanaghy in exchange for like the green half of Derry, maybe.
Yeah.
If he throws in a train line, who knows? There might be some basis for
who gets the medieval wall? You know, it's nice to have the view.
Well, it is sort of the forgotten county.
Yeah, I mean, when I visit the Pale, the amount of people, believe it or not, like who honestly think it's part of Northern Ireland. People who genuinely make that mistake that they actually think. I think it's because it's part of Ulster, and people think Ulster equals Northern Ireland. I think.
What's the politically correct here? Because I'd say Northern Ireland, and other people say to me, no, it's not Northern Ireland. So what's the political?
Being from Donegal, I can tell you that there are people who are very sensitive on that particular issue. But to be honest, if you say Northern Ireland, most people won't raise an eyebrow at home. Unless you're a real hardcore Republican who doesn't recognise partition and it's United Ireland and all that. But Northern Ireland is, since the Good Friday Agreement, we essentially by referendum recognise Northern Ireland and actually relinquish our claim on it as in terms of the Republic's claim on it. That was part of the Good Friday Agreement, so we can't really complain. Democratic vote.
It's interesting though that you bring that up now, because where we sit today with obviously Stormont not
in
formed,
complete gridlock.
in gridlock and has been for months, and every time they look at anything they give the extend a deadline. There is talk that obviously a deal has been almost agreed, but there's also talk in the south that it's not exactly. There seems to be that the Irish government haven't been. They did more damage in the last couple of weeks to any potential deal than helping actually.
It's such a mess up there at the moment. I've joked about this on Twitter. I think Northern Ireland is probably the only country in the world where you could have a major political scandal involving wood pellets.
Yeah.
It's going to be the most boring crisis.
Well, it was kind of genius all the same. I thought it was a good scam. It reminded me of the VAT carousel. You remember that?
It was a real nice. Will we say con? It was whatever happened there. It was it was a nice move. We'll say It was I mean it was. It was so dodgy.
It was worthy of Fianna Fáil. I think it was.
That was it. It was somebody obviously slipped them some details from the Fianna Fáil playbook on that one. It was so shady. And she did not cave in to pressure. She's like, nah, I'm not standing out.
She did a complete.
And government failed because of it, and then of course it was just by kind of bad timing that Martin McGuinness was ill and then Martin died, and then there's kind of leadership issues in Sinn Féin, and I mean. We're still basically in that same space. They haven't worked out any kind of agreement to get back into power sharing.
I was talking to somebody who was at the Ardèche there last week, and what struck them was that the audience is young, clever, and it's cross community. It comes from north and south.
Yeah,
Urban
and rural.
These are motivated. I mean, we're anoraks, the two of us, political anoraks. You look at the Fianna Fáil Ardèche and it's like, Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the Fine Gael Ardèche and it's Jurassic Park with a Bible.
Yeah.
And you look at Sinn Féin and it's young, and women. God, there's women everywhere.
Fiach Kelly was on talking to Hugh Linehan during the week, and he actually made the point that he said it was a young, mobilised, particularly intelligent women. And I'd say there was another comment that I saw, and again, it was the Eighth Committee is talking this week, but also as part of the Citizens Assembly. There's all of these other things around climate change, things around giving votes to the diaspora.
Yeah.
And I heard one of these dreadful tirades where it actually was opened up, where News Talk Breakfast opened the show saying that one of the points was, are they going to give the vote to the diaspora for a presidential election? And Paul Williams said, why not? It's just a ceremonial thing, and it'd be nice to include the diaspora. And Shane Coleman, much to my actual surprise, because I didn't think he would be the guy that would be the protagonist, or the antagonist, I should say, really, because he just went in, I'll give you 2 words why. 3 words why. President Jerry Adams.
Uachtar Adams. And
is that Coleman of Coleman at Large fame? No.
No.
The Economist radio presenter guy?
No, he was the Sunday Tribune before.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of the other guy, Coleman, the Economist, who famously wrote the book Things Will Only Get Better. In 2007.
Eternal growth and all.
Followed by his follow-up book, Look Out for That Iceberg.
Yeah.
Different Coleman. But this is Sinn Féin. This is the thing. Is, like you said, very, very young support base. Very big in Donegal and in rural areas, and now also in urban working class areas in Dublin. And now that Jerry is going to go out to pasture, that stick that is often used to beat them, the links to the past, the IRA, that's going to be more or less taken away. You have someone in there now like Mary Lou, if she goes for the leadership, who's not really tainted by any of that.
No, well,
so
I
it
suppose
would be more difficult to.
They're already trying to start that banging that drum, and I don't want to speak for.
And I'm not a Sinn Féin
supporter. We need to be clear on that.
We mention every other Ardèche, so
it was the one that was on recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to acknowledge that Jerry Adams was and is a significant political figure.
I think the significant political figure of his generation, without a doubt. And I know other people come on and they'll be doing the whole usual thing. A lot of people who vote now are born free. They were born free of any trouble in the north. These people have romanticised to a great deal the past, same as Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have romanticised their own pasts. So the pitch is levelling out somewhat. It'll be interesting to see where all this goes. If you want change, we know there are 3 main people to vote for: Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin. Everything else is ancillary to that, so it's up to people.
Don't have the other parties don't have the infrastructure on a nationwide basis that can really compete. Labour is always going to be, at the moment anyway, Labour is always going to be a junior coalition partner, and they'll always end up having to drink from the poison chalice that is being a junior coalition partner. Social Democrats are kind of in the same space as Labour. Yeah. They're probably appealing to people who are disillusioned with Labour after their last stint in government, and so Sinn Féin are probably the only other kind of big alternative to the big two.
Well, I have to say now, in defence of Solidarity, they are actually doing very well after coming from scratch.
Yeah.
And
they're established in Derry now as well. I think they have Eamon McCann as well.
Tony and I would like to see. We'd like to see more solidarity on the left. I don't believe you'll ever unite the left in that sort of firm coalition. But I do think you can unite behind ideas or ideals.
Yeah.
But the idea that you'd have this coalition of rainbow left,
Yeah,
you know,
it's very fragmented. It's very hard to bring all those things together. And there's
more worryingly, we could be. We're talking here now, and as we're talking here, there's Micheal Martin is staring at Leo's socks, and Leo's staring at Micheal's kale smoothie, and they're going to see who blinks first. And
Leo's updating his Snapchat and his Instagram.
Yeah, and that's. But the truth of the matter is that the supply and confidence agreement must be in tatters, because we've now got a Minister for Justice who.
Well, it's had its 3 budgets. There's no more reason for it.
But
that was pretty much their kind of blueprint, wasn't it?
That was it.
Yeah.
There's always the cynic in me who says, once you have those, by the way, you're now entitled to the pension entitlements because you've
I
made
think
it.
that's probably what's holding them back, is that they're very close to that we're going to get some money at the Independent Alliance. Ross hiding out in Stepaside. I'm laughing all day at Ross. He's like, oh God, where am I going to go? North Korea? No, they won't have me. Stepaside.
Someone get Ken Fox on. Someone get Ken Fox on. Actually, I saw it on Twitter this week. Oh no, Breen had it up on Twitter about the Oireachtas, he referred to it as the things that the ownership of for your representatives. I called it the Ken Fox Christmas Annual, where he just goes in.
I saw that. Yes,
and sees who's a landlord, who has business interests and farms and all the rest of it.
Well, Ken Fox actually had something to say. We had Ken Fox on, so we're going to favour people we have on. We're going to be real biased like that.
They don't call it the echo chamber for nothing.
It's ironic.
So what Ken Fox said this week was, here we go with the basic fair procedures that we're all entitled to, unless of course your name was Maurice McCabe. And I actually tweeted a bit about this morning, that I don't feel sorry for anybody in this except the man who is accused of the most heinous crimes and had a rat nailed to his door. Everybody else, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Speaking as a man from Donegal, who Donegal police. I mean, historically, there was so many accusations over the years.
Was it the McCracken Tribunal?
They had the Morris Tribunal.
Sorry.
I mean, so many dodges, and that was kind of the tip of the iceberg. We're now seeing the true extent of this now. The endemic problems that have been in Garda Síochána, and as you said, like Garda McCabe, I mean, probably the most serious allegation you can have thrown at you.
As a man, without a doubt. As a man trying, a good man trying to do what he thinks is right, and this is what happens to him. I mean, I don't know if you've read Serpico. Yeah, I have. I love it.
Like, I was reading it thinking, like, the only thing they haven't done to McCabe is shoot him in the face.
Well,
that's what happened to Serpico in the end.
He's the Serpico of on Garda Síochána.
Yeah, and only for he was so smart, as he's always, luckily for him, he seems to have always been a couple of steps ahead of the people he's been dealing with.
There's a huge thing that no one has picked up on, and I'm waiting on someone else to do it. How is it Maurice McCabe can bring his phones to a meeting and record people who trying to entrap him, and yet the Garda Commissioner can't find her phone? I don't understand.
Well, no, actually, cleverest move.
You can operate 2 phones at the same time.
I don't mean it was clever, but it was an astute move to record. I've been in a few meetings with fairly senior civil servants. Yes, I record everything. Everything.
Just hedging your bets at every single.
No, I have seen where you walk out of that meeting and what went on is described as something completely different.
And it's terrifying, because if he hadn't done any of that, he'd be, his reputation would be
at this present moment in time,
he'd
be somebody that we'd all think, well, there's a bollocks.
A pariah, social pariah at this point.
But actually, what came up, made me laugh was the Count caller, Pat the Cope, when Leo stood up and Leo waxed lyrical about why Pat the Cope should go seek legal advice. Pat, it was so Disney. It was unreal. And Pat turned around and he said, I'm not a lawyer, but I have common sense, and I think that's what's sorely missing in Fine Gael.
Pat the Cope, who of course is the deer leader, as he's known up home in Donegal.
Yeah.
He's got a lovely revolving gold statue over in Dunlow.
It's only a matter of time before he's beatified, I'd imagine. But I thought that was an amazing moment, because it just saw the discomfort of Leo, because he genuinely did think that and this goes again back to my point that I continue to make: how weak are the opposition when you have a government that walks on its knees, and they think that we're great for bringing them to their knees. And you're going like, come on. You know, the Count Corla just put the Taoiseach in his box for trying to obfuscate on what were actually reasonable questions that a Taoiseach needed to ask, and was actually kept on hiding behind the bottom line of an email that said, this was nothing to do, you know, I don't have to take any action on this, therefore I can have collective memory loss, and we can all pretend we forgot about it.
Well, I mean, we'll be going into this further in the week, but like Thomas Byrne Thomas Byrne TD was listening to all of this in the Dáil. Now, I follow Thomas on Twitter, and Thomas is a good tweeter, you know, and Thomas just went, here, campaign for Leo. and that was all Thomas had to say about it. The other thing that came out this week was the homelessness figures, and they are, unsurprisingly, up again. And you've a unique perspective. You spend time both Dublin and Donegal. I was in Cork earlier this year, and Cork to me is small, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody here, but the main street in Cork reminds me of the main street in Ashbourne. Like, it's not that big, but there were homeless people, and I was absolutely gobsmacked that on this very small main street in Cork there were people homeless. Do you see it in Donegal?
I wouldn't get to see it as much now. Where I would be from is right out in the sticks, so it wouldn't be like a centre of urban population or even suburban. It's right out in the boonies. But interestingly, I remember years ago, before even the Celtic Tiger had really reached full flight, there was some transient homeless people passed through the town, and it was just absolutely nobody could believe it. Like,
it was,
you wouldn't see homeless people up and all of a sudden there was homeless people there. But I would imagine Letterkenny now, Letterkenny is pretty big, and all of the usual kind of social ills and problems that would come with most towns and cities. Letterkenny would have that, like everywhere else now. I don't know what the figures are, and I don't get to see it as much. It's one of those things. It's like I live in this nice little bubble where I'm not affected. It's one of the many problems that doesn't affect me, but we all know that it's out there.
But it's just when you talk about the bubble, you actually have to understand that. Like, this was the week where we've had people like Erica Fleming sat down with Paul Murphy and Fr Peter McVerry. I heard Fr Peter McVerry actually say that he thought that Leo Varadkar was a hard right Taoiseach.
He did say it.
And I just thought to myself, going, in any other week, that makes a headline.
Yeah.
In any other week, that's front page news. But it didn't even register. Yeah. And people just move on because there's an acceptance that, that we've now we're rocketing towards 10,000 homeless people, and as Fr Peter McVerry would tell you himself, we're already well over that because we don't count
so many undocumented homeless people.
Exactly.
That's what's scary as well, is that it's not just the stereotypical person on the street covered in wearing rags and it's people. It's much more closer to home now. There are people who are people who work but are homeless, and they're in temporary accommodation, or they can't get full-time accommodation, or families, single parents. It's people. People are you friends with that in your everyday life who are now affected by this problem, which is usually safely at arm's length from anyone who's kind of comfortably living a middle-class life somewhere.
I don't know if you saw the tweet that because I don't want to name the person who said it because I don't want to create any hassle, but someone put up a tweet saying, had an interesting thing, was heading off on the midterm recently with the kids, and put up that if someone wanted to on an email internally in the office, he put up an email and said, anybody want to feed my cat for the week? He had 4 offers because people were literally couch surfing. So that was in his office. 4 people came in and said, I'd love to, because what's happening at the moment is I'm staying with friends and I'm a burden on them, and this will give them a week of peace. And it was just
the biggest group of homeless people, and my name is highlighted this, is children. It's children, and there are children being born into homelessness. Born into it. I mean, that's in this country when there's how many houses is there or homes is there idle? There's
I know, yeah. I mean, it's not that long ago that we're talking about.
We're not talking tens, we're talking thousands.
No. I think you're talking in the region. Honestly, in terms, they're not all in the right places. They're not all, we want to be, but I think the actual figure is close to 120,000 empty.
I remember they were talking not so long ago about maybe knocking them down so that we can create more. More appetite for more new houses, in a truly kind of warped piece of logic. But it's like you said, it's like loads and loads of houses that most of them built in places that they probably shouldn't have been. They're not in the right places. You have Dublin, which is got a huge population, increasing. A lot of people who need to work in Dublin who can't afford to live in Dublin.
No.
and like it's just a horrible, messy problem. We also have things that would maybe kind of feed into it, like restrictions on how high buildings can go.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very low rise,
And we have a very bad idea of what high rise is. You know, someone says to in a Dublin high rise, you go, no, well, actually, Leo Varadkar himself had a high rise development blocked in Castleknock. It was 4 floors.
Yeah.
And it was tastefully done, and it was going to have actual a facade that was in keeping with the local area. But they called it no room for high rise in Castleknock. Leo himself wrote the letter to object. Right? That's passed out.
Did Joan write a letter too? Am I right on that?
I don't know.
I won't say it out loud just in case. Okay, that's an allegation.
Oh, interestingly, actually, now you just reminded me. I was going to bring up Chapel Izzard as an example of they have, like, if we're talking 4 or 5 story places, there's some very nice high rise accommodation buildings down there, and they're designed in such a way that they're heading, and they're kind of heading off the road, and it looks nice. So it's like you've got space being used wisely in keeping with the rest of the area, and it looks quite good. But it just reminded me of when I was going through Chapel Izzard the last day. I saw on the side of the road, this is up near Castleknock actually, I was on the way out, Joan Burton on the side of the road having a chat with Conor Lennon randomly, like some side of the road Illuminati meeting was going on. Like, I think they literally just bumped into each other.
Hang on, who had 15 minutes before he mentioned the Illuminati? Who wins
my drink. But another thing that came out this week, and again, because this week is so outrageous, chaotic, RTE Investigates did a really in-depth look at consultants and the hours they're putting into hospitals and the waiting lists and how they're adding to these waiting lists and how basically it's like for poor people.
Yeah, and I think the worst. I didn't get to see the documentary, but I saw bits of it, and I saw the kind of discussion around it on Twitter. What really kind of annoyed me was the idea of these consultants who are getting very, very good money, and some of them were doing was there people less than 10 hours a week they were putting in?
Tony O'Sullivan 7 on Twitter, he put up this tweet, and this is cool. God help the poor man doing the lotto to have his knees fixed when the consultant already has the winning ticket.
Yeah, well that's it really, isn't it? Like,
you can't, like, when you think about it, like, and again, does this come back down to an ideological problem whereby we talk about the fact that you strip out, you hollow out a health service.
That's where public service, yeah.
And you end up, people have to go private. I mean, I don't know. We could turn on a radio here if we wanted to, and I can tell you within if we just flick around, one of the ads will be for the Beacon, one of the ads will be for private health insurance. It'll be and this is the world, and where you I know I keep saying it, Martin, and I know you're probably fed up with it. It's called rent seeking.
Yeah,
you create a market where there isn't one, and then you gouge out the profits from it. And sadly, we're all actually
the best health systems are single tier universal health system.
Yeah,
and they're the best. And it's been shown that education systems, the exact same thing works.
Yeah.
Remove the 2-tier, and then those who would spend their money on the 2-tier will then demand that the single tier reaches standard, and that's how you fix it. But as we know, Fine Gael will sell anything that's worth a damn. It'll be sold off. I mean, it is unbelievable how out the far right economically they are. They are extremely far right economically. Uber came up this week as well, and because we're out in far right economic, Uber, don't fucking use Uber. All right, don't do it. Somebody's getting screwed over for it. They concealed a cyber attack that affected 57 million people. People.
And they basically spread. They paid the ransom, as I understand it.
Absolutely, paid the ransom. But nobody knows what data has gone anywhere. They broke every rule in the book by paying the ransom and then covering it up afterwards.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, as a concept, it's like, let's just let anyone who wants to drive a taxi drive a taxi. Kind of a libertarian wet dream.
Welcome to.
And it's kind of like, it's the same logic and kind of management style all the way up to the top.
I had really good discussion about this with a guy who's very pro Uber, and he goes to me, "There's an algorithm." I said, "Look, sorry, don't want to use bad language, but I said, for fuck's sake, before radio was invented, they had a guy on a horse ride over and back with the message. Just because radio invented didn't make him self-employed. Your algorithm is the exact same as your two-way radio. It's just a new form of communication that makes it easier for the boss, not easier for the worker.
Well, Uber has had a lot of problems in terms of people having to step down. It is endemic. It is systemic. It comes back to what we talk about. Say Uber. You talk about what's the oh God, why am I struggling with the room sharing place where you Airbnb, and we've all you've cities around the world that are actually trying to force Airbnb out into the light. You've all of these things that are going on, and back at home we have a simple thing like around the PSC card. And how it's it's a data driven thing, it really is.
The PSC card is
the public service card.
Oh yes, the
new card that basically is
the biometric, not biometric, compulsory, not mandatory card.
TM.
Yeah. Which goes to something like is it 21 private companies have access to?
Look,
we're so loose on that.
I've written twice now to the Data Protection Commissioner's office to say, under what legislation are they asking for this information? And here's a company that's not on the specified list, and they're getting my data, and they're going, yeah, but social welfare says that's okay. And I'm going, look, I'm not asking you what social welfare says. What do you say? And they just keep batting it back and batting it back. But Ep8, who we follow here on Twitter, and in the new year, we are going to do a whole programme about this public service.
Is that Simon McGarr, is it? No?
Yes. We're going to do a whole programme about the public services card because there's so much in it and it's not getting out there.
Simon had some great stuff on
and
that.
Ross McMahon and Elaine Edwards.
Picked into it,
Well, he put up a tweet last night. Now, look, this is a little bit techie. Just be aware that the thread exists. Go have a look. If HTTPS was not properly installed on the social welfare server, every login would have seen personal data transmitted in plain text. Now, what that means is that anybody who can log on to a social welfare database can get your information. It's wide open. It's not coded. It's not protected. There's nobody watching your data. Now, if that turns out to be true, it's horrific that everybody's data is out there like that. Horrific.
Another story that actually passed well under the radar this week was just a simple thing around the European Banking Authority, and of course, me being the how do you put it? What do you call me? The evil banker, Martin, or what's the
banker with a sliver of socialism still clinging to
banker
his
dead
heart?
I don't have a heart. There's no question.
There's a slip. There's just this. It's like
he's like Darth Vader. You just need to get that Darth Vader helmet off him.
Just once in a while.
Ruth Coppinger tweeted yesterday that Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Labour are wedded to the free market, and we need to change it. And I thought, no, Ruth, actually, they're not wedded to the free market. The free market would work. It's the rigged markets that they're wed to, and that's what the problem is. But going back to this European Banking Authority, the actual tweet that went up literally said that the reason it went to Paris is because no one wanted to move to Frankfurt, no one trusted the Italians, and the Irish bid was described as Chernobyl putting itself forward to be the head of the European Nuclear Authority, okay? And I'm not even going to tell you, that was said, okay?
Understandably, it's essentially, we probably lost the run of ourselves more than anyone else in Europe, and now we're in charge of regulations and oversight. All of a sudden, Ireland is the designated driver for Europe when it comes to banking.
Well, we know. Well, we had the most experience. We had the biggest balls of 42%.
We've been at the coal face of this.
This
cluster.
Look, what we do really well, besides crack, we do crack great well. We're great at crack. We do crack and fucking up like nobody else, and the two are actually very intertwined.
Self-delusion. It's self-delusion. It literally it was described to us yesterday, Martin, by someone. They said it said it's not aspirational politics, or it's not aspirational people. It's self-delusion. Which is the reason we said, why didn't we get the Rugby World Cup? It's like a flat earther saying, this is, of course the earth is flat. that, like I've seen it on a Facebook post.
Now that you mentioned, I have to say,
Yes.
now that you mentioned flat earthers, and there was this guy that I was following on Twitter, and he was like a real normal person, like spoke about normal things, like killing politicians, shit like that. But
Normal stuff.
yeah, he then turned into a flat earther.
Yeah. They walk among us.
You've had great experience with this.
I met, and I won't name and shame the guy. He's a nice guy, and this is the bizarre thing: a smart guy, educated.
Yeah.
This is a guy. Judging by his accent, not that you should judge people by accents, but he sounds like he probably went to a good school. He's educated guy, smart guy, and I was working on Vikings, the TV show. He was on Vikings as well, and it came up in conversation. I don't know how it came up in conversation, but it came up one day, and he came out as a flat earther, and we all thought he was joking.
Yeah.
As you would, but he stuck to his guns over, I would say, 3-4 weeks. If he was joking, he's a comedy genius, and he never breaks character. But he had worked out all these arguments, and we were having a bit of fun with them, and eventually it turned into quite an intense debate. It was like the only topic on set for about one solid week, and his logic was fascinating. So what I found interesting is that there was no way of arguing with him in terms of presenting peer-reviewed science or even just scientific logic or anything that was. There was no empirical way
evidence. You weren't able to
prove to this guy that the
he
Earth
wasn't a
flat.
politician.
No.
Okay.
And so everyone would argue with him and say, "Oh well, if you look at the you can get a live feed from the ISS, and you can look at the," and he'll, "Oh well, that's all fake."
Yeah.
And then you'll say, "Well, did you not see Felix Baumgartner when he went up and he did his jump?" And he goes, "Oh, they used fisheye lenses." So there was always a way to deflect the argument because you can't physically take him up to the edge of the Earth's atmosphere and show him that it's round. And so he had all these ways of deflecting the arguments, and one of his arguments was. You can't fly directly over the North Pole or the South Pole. The military won't let you do that.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not true. You can actually fly over the North Pole and the South Pole. There are a few flights, not many, but there are flights that go over that way. There's not much reason to go that way. That's why there aren't that many flights. But you can do it if you want to. But you can't show him there and then that you can't do it. So he would deflect that away. So his argument was you could go over the North Pole or the South Pole. And the only way I found of making him question his belief was to appeal to something that you could actually, that would make sense to him there and then.
Yeah.
So I said to him, okay, right, let's assume you can't go beyond the North Pole and the South Pole because of the military. Let's assume that's true. I asked him, have you ever been travelling? Have you ever been to America? He's like, oh yeah, I've been to America. He goes, where did you fly? You flew from Ireland and you went west to America. He's like, yeah. I was like, and you can drive all the way across America and go to the west coast. He's like, yeah. I was like, you can get on a plane west coast and you can fly over to Asia. And he's like, yeah. I was like, then you can get on another plane and you can fly west and you come back to Europe, yeah? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, is it a cylinder? And he was like, oh yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
but there's something really interesting happening there this week. With the
Indeed, yeah. In America, is it Michael Hughes? His name is. I had to write down a few of his quotes here. He's a former limo driver, and he has made his own rocket, and he wants to fly 1,800 feet directly up over the skies of California to prove once and for all that it's all a big scam and that the Earth is flat. 20 grand his rocket cost. He's going to live stream it. Or he's going to live stream the launch at least. And the rocket will be launched from the back of a converted motorhome purchased from Craigslist.
I think he lives out in Ashbourne, Martin.
You must be joking. That fella's straight from Ballymun, I'm telling you. That's hillbilly genius.
And this is the quote that got me. He was explaining his reasons for doing it. He said, I don't believe in science. He said, I know all about aerodynamics and fluid dynamics, but that's not science. That's just a formula. There's no difference between science and science fiction. And he said, John Glenn and Neil Armstrong are Freemasons. That there tells you all you need to know about this.
I just have this picture. He'll get to, was it 18,000 feet he wanted to?
1,800, I think. Is it 18? Yeah, it's about a
So he gets
1 point. We're just over a mile.
1,800 feet.
1,800 feet.
But if he flew in an aircraft, he'd be at 35,000 feet. What's he going to prove at 1,800 feet that he can't fly at 35,000?
If he even gets that high, yeah.
Well, I definitely think that his last vision of globe Earth, and it will be his very last vision, will just be globe Earth, and it'll be like, oh shit.
That was the term that was developed on the set of Vikings for anyone who was sucked in by the round earth theory was known as a globetard.
Right. Oh God.
Globetard. Yeah. Oh, you're buying into this whole round earth thing, huh?
Globe virtual signal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not great, is it? Now, guys, I have to say, because it actually is on the rise.
Well, all I
know,
can say is that for the rest of this week, we are sort of in flat Earth politics.
Yeah.
Right?
It's insane.
It's fascinating, and I wish we could talk more about it here. But I mean, it's all happening as we speak. So even while we're sitting in this room, we could be out of date by the time we walk out.
And I don't think so. I have to say, if we're gonna, we're not in the game of giving predictions, but I can see.
I am.
I know, yeah. You're convinced the government are going to fall. I just
no. I see what's happening is that Fianna Fáil are looking for a way to both simultaneously condemn and support Fine Gael.
They're trying to have their cake and eat it. Basically. This whole
Alan Kelly is trying to claw his way to the top of Labour. He's somewhere, whatever source he has.
I don't think is he going to regret his Frank Underwood? He cited Frank Underwood as one of his great political influences.
Did he?
Yeah, before the Kevin Spacey scandal.
Well,
so that might come back to haunt him.
He's clawing his way to the top. Brendan Howlin is playing the statesman. You know, kind of throwing little barbs at Fianna Fáil.
Literally throwing pieces of paper over Sinn Féin as well.
Well,
So
he
read
was
into
saying,
the record.
When we were in government, we would have had an issue with this. Now, he's not realistic, because when they were in government, they had an issue with nothing. Absolutely nothing. But what he's saying is that Fianna Fáil should really have an issue with the supply and confidence agreement. And Fine Gael's favourite subjects of ours are turning around to the spin unit, the communications unit, and going, $5 fucking million, get us out of this fucking hole! It's just what's happening.
I'd say Leo will be on a triathlon on Sunday, and we'll all be told.
Extra special socks.
Yeah.
Little sad face socks.
An Instagram post, and but look, we don't want to look. It is what it is. My only other thing is on the flip side, it's Sinn Féin are struggling because Jerry has a 3-month lead out, and I think they've got an actual Ardcolia meeting scheduled for March, which is supposed to be when the secession happens, or the bloodless coup of Mary Lou, because no one seems to be ready.
Pierce has ruled himself out.
Pierce has ruled himself out. Basically, everybody has more or less kind of. If Oliver Callan was here, he'd go bleeding deadly. You know.
Well, I think the prospect of a Christmas election, you know. You're there, the kids are small, they're waiting for Christmas, the doorbell goes, you think it's that present from the auntie in America, you know, the American present coming over, you'd open the door and there's gobshite standing there, freezing cold. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about your local issue. What are you going to say? He goes, fucking gate, go. The whole lot of is. I think it's going to be a brilliant election. Nobody's going to see a poster anywhere because all the Christmas lights.
It'll be phoned in.
I think it's going to be brilliant. I think it could teach a lesson. Get rid of all the canvassing, get rid of all the posters.
All the wasted printing.
Just get rid of it all. None of it works anymore. We're in a digital age, people.
Exactly,
We've moved on.
Yeah, it's...
Well, I think that's a nice place to bring it to a stop, because I don't think there's going to be election, boys and girls. Martin seems to think there will be.
I think, you know, we're on a knife edge here.
And I'll sit on the fence like I always do.
That's what you had the deciding vote. So
I'm like the guys who reneged on their vote and cost us the banking authority.
Oh yeah.
Spoil my vote.
You're the pro-Brexit, anti-Brexit person that sat there and said, well, I'm not going to vote.
I'm Jeremy Corbyn, basically.
Where's our Corbyn? Hashtag where's our Corbyn? Listen, lads, I just want to thank you all for listening and remind you that you can subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Please take a minute to leave us a review, and don't forget to tell your friends. You can send us an email to theechochamberspod@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter @echochamberspod. Thanks again, folks. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.